Same dude, different day. Chapter 8. How did she get a man? Later on, I realized all the men in my life were never very valuable to me. They were just a means to an end. My experience with Xavier turned me inside out, leaving me desperate for attention. Attention is what I sought after, and they happily complied. On the contrary, the pregnancy scare awoke a part of me I didn't even know still existed. I realized I didn't really want to be pregnant. I wanted what the baby would represent. I had entertained a handful of men to prove myself desirable, but later realized I was just searching for love. I thought I hated love. Love was heavily associated with heartache, lies, and embarrassment. Who had time for all of that? Apparently, I did. Previously, love had huffed and puffed and blew my house down, but I wanted it back and was willing to forgo all my fears to get it. After my failed pregnancy, I became obsessed with love. It didn't help that it was wedding season. It seemed like everybody and their mama was getting married. All the girls who were hoes in high school were now wifed up and living that bougie lifestyle as a soccer mom. If they made it, certainly I could too. My social media timeline was flooded with corny wedding hashtags, spade for each other, and happily ever after. I'd often find myself wondering to myself, how did she get a man? Jealousy flowed through my body as I double tapped and commented with a fake smile on every wedding related photo. I wanted to be happy for them, but my bitterness wouldn't allow me to do so. They had what I wanted. Or did they? Was the grass greener in matrimony, or was it just artificial turf? I often wondered if walking down the aisle to be wed was kind of like walking across the stage for a college degree. When most graduates walk across the stage, they imagine that all their hopes and dreams will be fulfilled once they enter the real world. The sad reality is many graduates enter the workforce in a field that doesn't even match what they studied, leaving them feeling inadequate with only a big pile of debt to keep them warm at night. Hopefully, marriage didn't resemble the sham of higher education. While receiving an education is essential, many universities, as well as lenders, have capitalized on people's desire to learn. Sally Mae and them had our finances on lock. Similarly, social media had successfully created a facade of marriage that had all the single ladies craving to post pictures of their boo and use the hashtag my man, my man, my man. We were all getting bamboozled, and I was no exception. Thirsty for a fiance, I scrolled through all my social media outlets and sent friend requests to every attractive man I saw. Several guys did take the bait, but none of them were really a match for what I had in mind. The Bible says he who finds a wife finds a good thing, but I guess my future bae sucked at hide and seek, so I had to intervene. Since everybody else was booed up, I became heavily motivated to do the same. I even went as far as looking on one of the world's largest professional networks for a potential bae. While scrolling through the networking site, I noticed a handsome gentleman who worked at a popular entertainment company. There was an opening in his company's accounting department, so I jumped at the opportunity to apply in hopes that I could jump his bones later. It turned out he didn't even work there anymore. He dodged a bullet because I probably would have ruined his life. The experience wasn't a total loss, though. I got that job, and I instantly gained access to perks such as tickets to concerts and professional sporting events. They even provided me with a signing bonus, which I used to pay the security deposit at my new solo apartment. For the first time since I moved to Atlanta, I felt like a real adult. It was so dope that I was finally able to stand on my own 2 feet. However, it was a little disheartening to know that I had no one to share it with. No matter how much progress I made, unhappiness always seemed to have me in a chokehold. Thankfully, the demands of my new job left me with little time to wallow in my state of isolation. 2 months into the position, I realized that I had bitten off more than I can chew. The department needed a full overhaul, and somehow I was volunteered to manage the project. Late nights and early mornings led to mood swings and shots of alcohol. The exhaustion that I felt at the end of each night momentarily kept me out of trouble. My crazy work schedule lessened the chance of me winding up in some random person's bed. I had unintentionally taken a hiatus from my sexual shenanigans without even realizing it. Note to self, stop holding grudges. Trouble seemed to follow me wherever I went, so I suspected it wouldn't be long before I faced some foolery. In fact, I was expecting it, especially since my friend CJ's wedding was right around the corner. A group of college friends in a confined space with alcohol and no real adult supervision was sure to lead to a ratchet good time. Ready for the much needed vacation, I happily packed my bag and headed north. The 6 hour drive from Atlanta to the wedding's destination gave me plenty of time to think. As I reflected on my current situation, I realized I had been avoiding talking to God. But it was just he and I on the open road, so I can no longer hide. I had to listen to what he had to say, and it wasn't pretty. He knew that I was irritated with him because of the lack of courtship in my life, yet, even through my disappointment, God was still ordering my steps. What started as a crazy quest to find love on the internet turned into me landing a position that allowed me to become financially independent. God was still looking out for me, so I couldn't understand why he freely offered to be the God of my career, but not the God of my companionship. He always seemed to get me where I needed to be as far as my profession was concerned, but he never had that same energy when it came to my personal life. It's as if he wanted me to be lonely. I thought he said it wasn't right for people to be alone, but apparently that scripture held true for everyone except me. I felt like God was trying to show me that he still had my back, but it was tough for me to trust him since I thought he had let me down before. I was holding a grudge against him, and it was preventing me from flourishing in many areas of my life. Unsure how to move past my pain, I remained in an unhealthy cycle of doubt and mediocrity. My GPS instantly interrupted my talk with God, yelling at me to get off at the exit. I proceeded to the route and checked into my hotel, then took a nap to preserve my energy for the time ahead of me. After my nap, I squeezed into some form fitting attire, poured some bad decisions in my cup, and headed straight to the shuttle for the wedding. The wedding was aboard a beautiful ship. The ceremony was on the top deck beneath heaven and overlooking the still water. It was simply beautiful. CJ's husband cried as he walked down the aisle. They had been together since sophomore year, so everybody else in our graduating class was crying too. It was about time they jumped that darn broom. Everything from the captain-themed ceremony decor to the miniature engraved ship party favors was beautifully done. CJ had a knack for that type of stuff. The music selection was dope too. It was a mixture of old school R&B and the classic hood hits. My college crush was scheduled to perform at the wedding, but he made a last-minute cancellation. It was unfortunate because I was so excited to reunite with him and hopefully make some bad decisions that would lead to some good stories. Luckily, the eye candy was in abundance, so my crush being absent from the party was hardly noticeable. CJ had strategically placed me at the singles table. I wasn't sure if she was up to no good or if she was down for the cause, but I was more than willing to participate in the experiment. This dude named Malik sat right next to me. Before his arrival, I had stared at his name tag, hoping that he would be attractive. He did not disappoint me. His skin looked like Reese's peanut butter cups, and he smelled like answered prayers. A tattoo that stated faith over fear peeked out at me from his unbuttoned shirt. Out of the corner of my eyes, I kept noticing that he was looking at me and licking his lips. Malik and I engaged in a little small talk until it was time for me to get in the huddle to catch the bouquet. That was my least favorite part at weddings. It's the part where they showcase all the desperate girls that couldn't find or keep a man, yet I still found myself among the pack of wolves waiting for the chance to catch the magical wifey maker. Shortly after winning the invisible yet implied guarantee of marriage, I found myself in Malik's arms on the dance floor. Our lips were close enough to touch, but I turned away. During our short conversation at the table dedicated to the young and the horny, I learned that he was only a senior in college. I tried to stay away from him because he was too young for me. He probably had about 10 more years of being an F-boy left, and I wasn't with it. Although I was prone to making less than perfect choices, I was used to doing it with guys my own age. Being a cougar didn't interest me at all, so I managed to avoid an unnecessary interaction that night. Plus, I wasn't feeling very sexy after a night full of twerking and sweating. By the time the reception was over, my edges looked like they needed to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Exhausted from the night's festivities, I took a shower, wrapped my hair, and went to bed alone. Note to self: stop comparing your love life to others. The next day, I felt extremely grateful that CJ opted out of having a bridal party, not only because it allowed me to relax and take in the gorgeous scenery, but I wasn't emotionally prepared to be a bridesmaid again. Being a bridesmaid was like being the ultimate side chick. Think about it, you get all dressed up to walk down an aisle. You are walking towards a man that is willing and ready to commit. The catch is, he's not willing to commit to you. So there you are, walking towards the idea of something that you really crave, yet you're forced to watch it from the sidelines. A little while after I moved to Atlanta, I was the maid of honor at my baby sister's wedding. Just a few short months after finding out the love of my life was a fraud, I found myself smack dab in the middle of all my heart desired, yet my desires were being presented to someone else. No amount of counseling or fermented beverages could successfully remove me from the level of defeat I felt. Those memories of being a jealous maid of honor made me even more thankful that CJ had decided against it. As I drove back to Atlanta, I glanced over at the bouquet that I had caught during the reception and was suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. Superstition tells us that the woman who catches the bride's bouquet will be the next to wed. Well, I had caught the bouquet at my sister's wedding and I was still very much single. Typically, I try to refrain from comparing myself to other women, but I couldn't help feeling that something was wrong with me. My baby sister and I grew up in the same household with the same morals instilled in us, yet she was 4 years younger than me, but ages ahead of me where romance and stability were concerned. Similar to that, my girl CJ and I went to the same college, took most of the same courses, but somehow I ended up at the singles table at her wedding, drooling over an adolescent man child. Before I knew it, I had just thrown that bouquet out the window. I had a tough time understanding how I had the same foundation as these women, but were nowhere close to heading down the path of marriage. Were they prettier than me? More educated, more fun? What was their secret sauce? I love them dearly. They were my family, but I'd be lying if I say I wasn't envious of their courtship credentials. They say enjoy the journey because getting there is half the fun. But in the words of Erica Badu, I think I made a wrong turn back there somewhere. Note to self, switching it up doesn't always guarantee success. When I got back to Atlanta, I was an emotional wreck. Happy, glad, jealous, mad, you name it, I felt it. Jada and I hadn't spent much time together since we were no longer roommates, so I called to meet up with her for a girls' night. We went to happy hour at this little lounge in Midtown decorated with bar swings. The see-through top that I wore had my mountains peaking to perfection. Jada wore a cat suit that had her yams looking like Sunday dinner. Dressed to impress, we entered the bar and immediately caught everyone's attention. Random guys kept stopping by and buying us drinks. The music was going, the drinks were flowing, and that caused all of our common sense to slowly become non existent. Jada and I began to dance suggestively on one another, which attracted a situation that neither one of us expected. Two females walked up to us and started buying us shots. We never turned down free drinks. Plus, they were kind of cute, so we welcomed their presence. The additional drinks, however, caused me to stumble to the bathroom and throw up all the free liquor that I had just recently earned. After I thoroughly rinsed out my mouth and freshened my breath with a few pieces of gum, I returned to our section. When I returned, our two new friends offered to take us to the strip club. I hadn't visited any of the strip clubs since I had been in Georgia, but that night would be a night of many firsts. I got in the passenger seat of my new friend's Lexus while Jada rode with the other girl. I didn't remember much from that night because I blacked out several times. The only thing I did remember was kissing the girl at a red light and then pulling into some random underground parking space to finish whatever we had started. I don't know what happened in that parking lot, but I didn't have any pennies on, so my bisexual cherry was probably popped. The next morning, I woke up in Jada's bathroom covered by a sea of toilet paper. Jada was on the floor next to the toilet wrapped up in the shower curtain. The full details of that night will forever be a mystery. Simple tasks like walking and talking were a struggle that morning, so I truly hope that we weren't stupid enough to drive ourselves home. I peeked out of the blinds but was unable to find my car. I searched my phone for clues from the previous night's adventure and stumbled upon a text from a random 404 area code number. Hey babe, call me when you wake up from the dead, lol. Apparently, the girl that I shared a little parking lot passion with helped me get home safely. I sang her praises and told her that I owe her big time. We text back and forth every day after that night. We even linked up to watch some movies, but you know how all movie nights go. I felt weird because I was on the verge of being in my first real relationship since I moved to Atlanta, but this time I would be in a relationship with a girl. Although this was my first consensual bisexual experience, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't always been curious. When I was a kid, I was molested by a female. We were a few years apart in age, and I had considered us as family until she took advantage of me. I believe my curiosity stemmed from that experience. I was too young to know what was going on, but as I grew older, there was always something in the back of my mind encouraging me to experiment. Before now, I had never told anyone about my molestation except for Xavier. I know her feelings against the chick because I don't know if she fully understood what she was doing either. Her mom would do anything for another hit, so she probably entertained females for drugs, and that's where her daughter had picked up on it. Nonetheless, I was now ready to experiment with my feelings towards the same sex, but there was just one issue that was preventing us from doing so. Apparently, my new girlfriend had a boyfriend. I could not win. Even when I switched teams, I was still a side chick. Eventually, old girl and I parted ways. She was beautiful, but she wanted me to do too much for her. Somehow she figured that I would be the guy in the relationship and was therefore responsible for courting her. Things would never work out with us because I refused to jump through hoops for intimacy that had to be strapped on. I wanted the type of love that couldn't be easily detached. Unfortunately, she could not provide that for me, so I had to let her go.